There's some. All right. Welcome everybody to day 4 of Build. We made it. It's the last day. And it's 8:30, and some of you, how many of you have been in Lumen Field yesterday? A few. So I'm sure the people that were in Lumen Field and couldn't wake up this early are not here. My name is Zohar. If you're here for learning about governance and securing Power Platform Microsoft Copilot Studio agents, then you're in the right place. I run the governance team in the Power Platform, and with me today is Asaf, who is the PM for governance for agents specifically in Copilot Studio, and we have 2 exciting guest speakers that will join us on stage. This is going to be a pretty exciting session for telling you all about how to let the chaos of agents reign in your organization and the enterprise while knowing that you could reign the chaos. There's a lot of questions about how do we get started and how do we secure and govern these agents where people start consuming them and building them. I see a lot of familiar faces from the booth. We spent the week in the booth and people came and asked these questions. So I was telling them, hey, come to this session. So I'm all excited to kind of walk you through. Through the beginning of the Build conference, you've already seen that we're in this era of agents, and Microsoft and the industry keeps talking about agents and agents taking over and helping us do work more efficiently so we can actually focus on the real things and not the mundane work that we need to do. And this session is all about this individual in the image that how do we help IT and organizations to feel comfortable about letting this start becoming real in your organization, how to get started, how do we remove some of the concerns. There's a lot of things to learn. We are only touching the peak of the iceberg. There's so many capabilities we wanted to bring here today. We've got 60 minutes, so we're going to touch on what's new. We're going to try and frame it for you on how to think about it. And then we're going to close with here's a lot more homework for you to all go and learn and all the resources that you could use to learn more. So the agenda for today is I'm going to start by framing a bit about how to think about where we're at with the journey of agents. We're going to invite MSIT, who is our customer zero, our first customer to pick all the things that we release and have announced at Ignite and at Build. And we're getting started in Microsoft adopting all of that. There's a lot of agents going on in the Microsoft as an employee that I'm using and everybody else is using, and you'll see some of that. And then we'll switch to the majority of the conversation today is, okay, so how do you become a customer like that in your enterprise you use all these agents as well? So when we talk about agent, and you might have seen it, then how many of you have been in the session yesterday between 2 to 3, 1:32 that Ryan and Sean Nandi have showed? We'll talk a bit about that session, but this is kind of 2 sessions that you should probably watch if this is something that you're caring deeply about. In that session and here, we'll talk about agents. There's many flavors. So the way we think about them, there's simple agents. We call them retrieval agents. They help employees get information. So it's conversational. You chat with them. They give you, they're grounded in information, and they give you the most relevant HR answers or IT help desk answers. Or any employee that is answering questions day in, day out can actually build an agent that is grounded in the knowledge that they build, and then stop answering the same questions all the time, and everybody should be able to do that. And then all the way to the other side, which is autonomous agents that talk to other agents and do tasks. They could actually scan the email or invite meetings, or you're going on a day off because you're sick and you want someone to just go through your calendar, cancel all the invites, move things around. Agents can now do that for you, and that's what we call autonomous agents or task-oriented agents. And in this session, you would learn that not all agents should be treated the same from a governance perspective. So simple agents, you should think of them as documents. They give access to information. We should make sure that there's no leak, that they don't phish, so that people are interacting with them. They don't end up in websites they're not supposed to be websites. These are the main concerns that CISOs and IT have when I talk to them. And then task-oriented or autonomous agents are more like executables. You have to govern them like executables. They can actually do things that are non-reversible. You have to make sure that whoever builds them has privileges to access the data sets or change things in the database that you would have given them if they were developers, and now you're making it low code available so everybody could actually use it. So you're more concerned about sharing credentials or doing things that are non-reversible, and you want to monitor and see that all those right things are happening. When we talk about agents, there's multiple tools that Microsoft provides and a lot more tools outside of Microsoft that you could build these agents. So conversational agents and simple agents today could be built by Agent Builder in Microsoft 365. You just click on Create. You ground it with data. It's almost like filling up a form, vibe coding, and then you end up clicking Submit, and you've got an agent. And then all the way to developers or pro code developers that could work in Visual Studio and build with Azure Foundry and create agents with a lot more capabilities. And then today we're going to focus mostly about the Copilot Studio agents. This is sitting in the middle. It's a low-code, no-code tool that allows everybody to come in as an employee. We call them makers. So there's users, there's pro devs. Makers are the ones that are using the low-code and no-code capabilities, and it actually stretches nicely to allow you to do simple agents all the way to very complex agents. So it's a perfect tool to actually boost adoption and usage of agents in your organization. And Copilot Studio is another part of the Power Platform. The Power Platform has been around for close to a decade. It actually serves Dynamics 365, so if your company is using anything CRM, ERP, it's built on top of the Power Platform. And now it's been extended to apps and flows and now agents. So what used to be Power Virtual Agents is now Microsoft Copilot Studio built on top of the platform. And this platform has historically been designed for both what we call the 10 for 10,000, which is 10 agents or 10 solutions that are built by professional makers to serve 10,000 people each. Think about your IT help desk agent. It could be built in Copilot Studio. In fact, my team has built a very productive agent that saves millions of dollars every year that is sitting in front of the admin center, and people that are opening ticket, it actually helps them solve tickets without needing help from Microsoft. So it actually is grounded with a lot of knowledge, and it feeds you as a user with here's the things that you could do before you actually need to open a ticket, and it's deflecting about 35% of all the tickets that come to us. So it's saving us a lot of effort of getting a person on the call. So these agents, and the agent I just gave example of is the 10 for 10,000, and it's been built with the Microsoft Copilot Studio. And then you also need to think about the governing or governance of the 10,000 for 10. This is any employee should be entitled and privileged to build something that lets them be more productive and do that in a way that doesn't put the organization in any harm. So this is any employee, 10,000 employees building agents and sharing it with 10 of their best colleagues to use those agents for their productivity needs. And that's the 10,000 for 10. And the governance of that, opening up the gate for everyone in the company to build agents, is a different problem that we will talk about today. So the art, how many of you have, I'll ask it this way, administration rights to the Power Platform Admin Center, have clicked and seen the Admin Center? All right, perfect. So really the magic is this. How do you, as an administrator or as a security officer, allow all the employees to build agents, either very simple agents or more advanced agents with some actions or all actions or maybe even autonomous? But at the same time, you put the guardrails in place and you know that you could sleep well at night because the right things are happening. And then, of course, you're going to trust and verify, and we're going to talk about that phase. But this is the art. This slide talks about how do you actually think about it and the model in which you should think about it. And that's where we're going to spend most of the time in the conversation today. And then for all of you out there thinking about this maturity model, what we've seen is in our conversations with organizations, some organizations are in the initial stage. They're just getting started. And they've seen some 10 to 10,000 showing up. So there's enthusiastic people building solutions already with Copilot Studio and starting to share it inside the organization. There's some self-service happening, but not a lot. That's the initial stage. All the way to the efficient stage where you've got IT providing a center of enablement team. There's great websites, SharePoint, with documentation on how to get started and guidance. People could easily ramp up. There's exactly clear guidance on where do you get started as an individual, how do you make it go all the way through ALM and pipelines to production and to the tenant catalog. So all that mechanism, there's no better way for me to express and explain that than inviting our customer zero, Aisha, to the stage and having a conversation with you all on how does Microsoft do this magic internally to allow people to start building agents inside the company. So Aisha, please join us, and we'll have a great conversation to express some of this magic inside the customer zero company that we're working with. So Aisha, tell us a little bit about.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Aisha Hassan. I am the customer zero lead for my Power Platform in Copilot Studio. I'm senior product manager in what's called Microsoft Digital. That's the employee experience arm of Microsoft IT. So along with my partners in security, we manage the Microsoft tenant. Our charter is to enable products and services and then empower our employees to build and innovate securely and compliantly. We also have the privilege of being customer zero. So we are the early adopters of products and solutions, and our insights and feedback is what allows the product to improve, so we can ensure that we put the best product out there for Microsoft customers.
All right, tell us a little bit about how big is Microsoft, and specifically from a low-code perspective and agents, what are we seeing in terms of adoptions today?
Oh, so Microsoft Tenants is huge, right? The landscape itself is massive across all different resources and assets. But if you're talking about specifically from a low-code and Power Platform, we have over 90,000 environments. And we have about over 10,000 agents that are built across M365 Copilot Studio. And then Agent Builder numbers are even higher, just because of the flexibility of it being low-code. Anybody can create an agent in minutes and be able to reason over M365 data and be able to share it with everyone.
So tell us a little bit about the strategy that you use in order to enable employees to build agents.
Yep. So our strategy entirely is rooted in how do we balance risk, governance, and innovation. So if you look at that spectrum going from left to right, so we talk about purely low-code scenario, Agent Builder are what call is just very low-risk agents. It's for low-code. Anyone can build it. It's grounded in M365, SharePoint, Graph, and public URL. You can very quickly build an agent in minutes, be able to share it with selective group and own organization, and they're just as powerful agents, like in terms of productivity, summarization, and a whole gamut of different scenarios that you can use this for. Then the middle tier is what we allow as for safe sandboxing. And we call those personal agents. So there's a combination of a lot of first-party and Copilot Studio connectors that we offer. So users can still build very impactful, powerful agent using Excel, SharePoint, and all the sources with Copilot Studio, and still be able to publish it to teams. And this is what we call is our sort of like me agent. So if you're just starting to get into the product, you want to understand it better, and you actually want to experiment with how autonomous agents work, how agent flows work, then this is a great way for you to get familiarity with that product and still build that powerful agent. We call these what me agents per se. And then all the way to the right is our enterprise agents. So those are the agents that, as in earlier slides, Zohar was showing 10 and 10,000 MAUs, that you might have those really impactful first-party agents that are either solving critical business scenarios. Those also include the agents that Microsoft has put out for other customers to use. And these go through our proper IT approval route, which is they have to have proper RAI, responsible AI, privacy, and SDL reviews and IT approved, so they can be shared broadly.
All right, quick question I get a lot in the booth is Microsoft 250,000 employees. How big is your team?
Oh, we have a very nimble but mighty team of about 10 or so folks. We've got an incredible service engineers, security engineers, architects, and then some PMs. And they're not dedicated only to this. So we actually work across different product suites. So yeah, so we're pretty, we're fortunate that we have a pretty incredible team.
All right, so talking about special agents, the 10 for 10,000 agents, give an example of one or two agents that Microsoft uses that have already shown value and return on investment.
Sure. So I think that one of the biggest or the proudest moment we have is back at Ignite, we announced employee self-service, or we call this the ESS. So it's this powerful agent that really is applicable to any enterprise. So when you look at from an employee experience perspective, we have a little bit of disconnected experiences, right? If I'm going to one portal to look at my HR information, and then I might go to another one for my actual facilities or devices needs. So what employee self-service does is this sort of operates kind of like in multi-agent context, where I can be looking up my vacation balance, and then in the next prompt, I could be opening a ticket with help desk. And it all does that in a single pane of glass as a declarative agent that I can interact with in Copilot Chat. And it meets me where I'm most productive. So if I'm using most of my time in Teams, it's right there that I can interact with and get my work done. Then similar to how the agent that your organization has built on the front of the admin center, we are building a lot of agents internally for Microsoft Digital, such as we have Azure DevOps agent, we have a PM agent. All of those are designed so that we can really increase productivity and reduce the time for mundane tasks, especially when it comes to planning, deployment, and those kind of things. So we're pretty excited to be able to leverage Copilot Studio, also other tools, bring in hopefully Azure AI Foundry, and then build these agents that not only help our enterprise, but how we can actually put them showcase in front of our external customers as well.
All right, I'll ask one more question. What is Microsoft doing from a center of enablement point of view? Like, how are you motivating people to actually use the technology or build the technology of agents?
Excellent. So questions. First is like, we just tell them, please build agents because they're cool. We show them. We also have a centralized hub for all the information, where it's a lot of training, a lot of videos. We have office hours and catered sessions where we go internally and talk to a different organization within Microsoft, collect their feedback and their use case, and then make recommendations. And really just the key thing is to get the word out there, but back it up with actual demos and trainings, and make sure that we have all those avenues available for the users to be able to come in and help. And we're very busy. I mean, we are very busy in terms of helping our own employees build all of these agents.
All right, now I'm going to run into trouble. If you had a magic wand, what is the one wish you want the product group to go improve and fix in the product so you could do even more or do it even better?
Well, Zohar asked for one, right? So I'm going to give you maybe one three-part wish, right? Because that's how it works. Of course, governance, right? And governance that includes robust inventory and then be able to do lifecycle management. So if you look at it from an admin perspective, right? I have Agent Builder, I have Copilot Studio, and then I have Copilot Chat, where I'm building agents in Visual Studio and then publishing them. So for me as an admin, that experience needs to be much more simplified. But in order for me to even get there, I need to have visibility into what is in my tenant. I can't govern what I can't see. I also would love a really robust and advanced ALM and CI/CD solution, so I can take a Me agent from my personal environment and have it go through all the way to production in a single view without really having to talk to an admin. I mean, I love our admins, I'm one too, but I'm pretty sure that the more we can enable users to be self-service, that's where we can get to more adoption and really improve the user experience.
All right, so thank you, Aisha, for giving us the run-through. The motivation for this conversation is to show everybody that, it could all be you. Like a lot of the things are out of the box. There's something that we call IT Glue that the team has done, and we'll show some capabilities today on how you could build your own IT Glue with automation. And I want to switch gears and kind of frame it on how to think about governance and security of these agents. And really, we break it down to these three pillars. So first and foremost, you need a secure digital environment. You need to make sure that things are built safe from the get-go and that you have safety up front, and you could monitor what these agents do, and you could make sure that these agents are built in a safe way. Then we'll switch gear and talk about control and how to think about the landscape of agents, who gets to build what where, and then what are all the controls that we give you to create this zone strategy that we'll talk about. And then last is this track and verify, so you could track and refine and make sure that everything that is happening the way you wanted, following the guidelines. And then if anything needs to be changed, then you go back to the other two pillars. So with that, let's start with secure, and let me invite Asaf to walk us through the secure pillar.
All right. Thank you, Zohar. I'm going to start off with a slide which may be a bit overwhelming, but I don't want you to get alarmed. What I do want you is to understand how seriously we're taking security in Copilot Studio. And in here you have a partial list of all the new features we're releasing for build, which are security related. I'm not going to talk on every one of them, but just touch on a few, which we'll eventually also see in a demo. We're going to start with what we call the agent protection status. And this is becoming general available in a few weeks. And it's part of our shift left philosophy. This is our intention to share the responsibility over compliance and security with the makers, with the people who build the agents. And for this, we're providing them inside Copilot Studio a list of data, labels, and other indications which will allow them to be able to know what's the status of their agents. And we're going to see this in a few seconds. Now, part of this thing I just showed you is the protection status against cyber attacks. So I want to touch specifically on what we're doing against cross-domain prompt injection attack, or XPIA for short. XPIA is a family of cyber attacks where the attacker modifies either the knowledge, the tools, or the triggers which are being used by the agent in order to inject their own prompts to the agent. And by doing this, they can cause the agent to do things other than what was intended. So for example, they can fill in different inputs. So imagine you have an agent which sends interview summaries to the HR department. An attacker can then take this agent, change the email address, and get this email sent to them instead. So that's one example. They can call different tools which were not intended to be used by this agent. They can skip tools, or they can change the order of tools. So for example, if I have a validation tool and then this email example I just shared with you, if I flip the order, right, I'll first send the email and then validate the address, which is not good. And all of this is done in order to eventually exfiltrate data from the organization. Now, I'm not going to get into too many details on how exactly we do this, but imagine a virtual wall that we're building around those potential attack surfaces, which eventually detects those prompt injections using models and algorithms, and keep them outside of the agent run. Now, we saw this. We saw how we showed this to the maker, but of course it won't be complete without letting the admins and the people who are actually responsible for security in the organization know about this as well. And for this, we have now in general availability this Purview integration, where every time we detect some kind of an attack, being it, you can see on the top example there, an indirect attack, an XPIA, which I just showed you now, or a direct attack, when someone's actually trying to mess with the agent. Every time we're blocking and detecting anything like that, we immediately emit an audit log, which then gets to the Microsoft Purview for the admins to work with. They can build automations on top of that in Microsoft Sentinel, or export it to Microsoft Defender for even better security. And with this, let's go to the demo. All right. So I'm here inside Copilot Studio in the agents page. This is where the maker sees all the agents they own and manage. And you can see here we added this new protection status column to the agents table. Now, on a first glimpse, you can start to understand what the protection status is, right? You can see these two are protected, these two need review. The ones which are not published do not have any status, because we don't want to clutter the display. And if we want to get more information, we could just click on this status and see like a summary of the status of the agent. This one seems fine, but I do see that there are 496 messages which were blocked recently, so I can click the See Details button here and get an elaborative view of the status of protection for this agent. And indeed, I see here in the top in this bar chart that most of it is purple, meaning this is threat detection. And indeed, there's a surge happened about 2 days ago in attacks which were blocked. Now, there's nothing I need to do here as a maker because these were blocked by the internal security protection of the system, but it will be a good practice to go and chat with the admin and let them know that something's happening. They have better tools. They can go and check where is this coming from and if there's anything else they can do in order to improve the security. Now let's take a look on those other two. So this one is review. I click on it and I immediately see why. It actually needs review because of the authentication settings. And it tells me it right in here. It is an autonomous agent which runs on its own. And it doesn't have any authentication configured to it, which of course can be a risk. So I can easily go and change this in the settings of the agent. And the last one here, let's take a look at this one. Okay, this one asked me to contact my admin. Why? Because of a policy issue. This is the needs review indication in here. Let's see what's going on in there. All right, so yeah, most of this are coming from policy violation. And I can see that everything was fine until Monday when somebody probably changed one of the policies of my organization, which now caused my agent to be blocked. If I was an admin, I can click in here and go to the admin center and see what was changed. But also as a maker, I can go directly to the agent and review the error. And because of a shortage in time, I'll just skip right here to the overview page, where you can see that this agent actually uses 2 public websites as knowledge sources, and somebody blocked them from being accessible. Hence, everyone who's trying to interact with this agent actually gets blocked. So I can either change this and select other knowledge sources, or talk with my admin and convince them that these are safe websites and are okay to use. And last thing I want to show you is this audit log. So I'm here now in the Microsoft Purview, the tool where admins can monitor the audit logs coming from the whole system. And indeed, we have here one of the logs showing an indirect attack. I'm not sure if now you can see it probably. Now it doesn't only give me which type of an attack was it and when it happened and which agent and under which user. It also lets me understand where did it come from. So for example, in this example, it came from a URL response with some kind of content which tried to inject prompt into my agent. It was blocked, and it's all good. If you want to learn more about security in Copilot Studio, check out the first link. This is where we publish our philosophy regarding security. If you want to learn more about the Power Platform broader perspective on security, it's the second link. And before we move on to the next section, one more thing. We're trying to build Copilot Studio as the most secure agent building platform in the market. But we do understand that there are things that can be done to even improve this more. And one of them is allowing our customers and partners to build on top of what we as a platform provide them. And to discuss this a little bit more, I want to invite to the stage Zohar and Ben, the CEO of Zenity, to tell us how Zenity are doing this. Please. Ben, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks a lot.
Let's start by telling us what Zenity does.
So Zenity is the first company that focuses on a holistic security and governance for AI agents everywhere, no matter where they are consumed or customly developed. Of course, we work closely with the Copilot Studio and the Microsoft 365 Copilot environments, working with some of the largest Microsoft users today in the world. We're very proud of it. We're helping organizations secure agents from build time to runtime, with the core of a behavioral analysis approach at the core of our solution. We basically try to learn from looking at the agents in build time, what is their intent, what they're supposed to do, and accordingly monitor it in runtime based on behavioral analysis, trying to understand if agents are starting to go rogue from any sort of basically a case, whether it's because someone compromised the agent or the agentic platform, or because an insider started to use the agent in a wrong way, or if someone changed the configuration of the agent and made it do things that it's not supposed to do. This way we can enable organizations to make sure that they can properly and securely enable agents, AI agents, across platform, and of course, mostly if they use the Microsoft ecosystem.
So one is thank you for joining us. And then tell us a little bit about the integration with the Power Platform and where does Zenity show up? And if a customer is using Zenity on top of the Power Platform, where do they find Zenity useful?
Of course. So Zenity works mostly with security teams, application security teams, and of course governance teams that are already heavily promoting citizen development and of course the usage of AI agents across the organization. That means that we're easily integrated into an environment. We need to leverage existing admin APIs that Power Platform and Copilot Studio already expose to their enterprise clients. We connect to the underlying platform via those APIs. We have multiple types of deployment models, but by connecting to those different plugins that are already available, we continuously scan and we continuously assure that all of the activities and all of the agents that people are consuming or building are properly configured with zero vulnerabilities, and second, that they are not, of course, compromised in runtime.
All right, if the audience or anyone watching wants to learn more about Zenity, where could they find more information?
So, of course, we have a website. It's www.zenity.io. We're also here at Build. You can find us in a lot of the other security conferences. We just came back from RSA. We're going to be in Gartner and in Black Hat right in the coming weeks and months. So we're around.
Awesome. So thank you, Ben, for joining us on stage. Thank you, Asaf.
Sure.
So just like Zenity, we work closely with other customers and other partners, Palo Alto, and a list of additional partners that contribute on top of the out-of-the-box, and then you as developers are able to extend and do the same. So I'll show some of these things on how do you plug into the Power Platform and how do you use the administration APIs to build solutions on top of what you might or might not find inside the box. So with that, we're closing the secure pillar and we're switching gears to talk about control. And just before I switch to, I was envied by Asaf showing demos. I want to get to the demos as well. I'll show you a few things that I'm going to talk about. This is a model that Gartner talks about. We've been using it for low code, for apps and flows, and now for agents. And the way to think about your agents or solution landscape is this zone strategy. So it starts with these two aspects of how complex is the solution and then how much risk is it introducing. And you should think of it in colors of green, yellow, red. So green zone is where you're opening the gate and allowing everybody to build solutions, agents included. You put the guardrails in place and everybody could build, and then IT, CISO could sleep well at night because they know that the guardrails are in place, and I'll show some of that. And then there's this yellow zone where someone wants to promote it to a broader audience and IT needs to be involved, a little bit more involved, and then all the way to the red zone, which is IT-governed environments that need to be closely monitored. Devs don't get to dev in production. ALM is used to move things from dev to test to production. Someone wakes up in the middle of the night because these are the 10 for 10,000. These are the crown jewels. You could run the Olympics on the Power Platform, or you could do Black Friday on the Power Platform. This is the red zone where these assets live and run from. And that's also all about the Power Platform. So I'm going to touch on a few zones that Aisha also talked about for MSIT that you want to think about. This is how you should, leaving Build, go back and do that in your organization. So zone 1.1, this is the place where you allow people to build very simple agents. Retrieval agents, conversational only, built by Microsoft 365 Agent Builder that everybody could build and then share those agents to answer questions instead of them getting emails or Teams chat and answering the same questions again and again. You would see a lot of those agents being built. MSIT is already seeing thousands of these agents being built by teams that just want an agent serving the Q&A of their websites, IT help desk, HR, and so on. Then there's I'm going to skip to the red, zone 3 or zone 2 is the red zone, where someone wants to build a special 10 to 10,000 agent. They come to IT and they say, hey, how do I get started? You then print them a dedicated highway from dev to test to prod in the red zone. You give them privileges on the dev you kind of give them a Lego box with all the things they asked for. I need this connector, I want Salesforce or ServiceNow, or I want SQL. And then you give them ability to do all of that in that dev environment. And then when they're done, you actually review what they built, and then you move them to user acceptance test, to a UAT. You test and validate. And then in production, actually, you take away their privileges. You say, here, IT would run it for you. You limit it only to what was built. So if they use SQL, you give them not just SQL, but the specific SQL they use. And you say, this is how it's going to run here, such that if any, like Asaf showed, if any bad actor ends up in the production environment, they cannot do much. They could just do whatever the agent was intended to do. So that's the red zone, and that's highly governed. And the thing I'm trying to emphasize is, in that red zone, that it's 10 for 10,000, that's not what you want to do for every simple agent, because that's a lot of overhead for IT. You can't actually do that for the 10,000 to 10. So I'm going to talk about the middle zone, which is the way to open up Copilot Studio consumption to every employee in the environment. So in 1.1, we talked about Agent Builder and simple retrieval. In 1.2, we talk about a green zone for everybody to build Copilot Studio agents with actions, so tasks. You could run and use tools. You could connect maybe to other agents that you've built. And then you could even make autonomous agents in that zone, and that's what we're going to demo. Just before I go to the demo, the things I'm going to show are, hey, we're celebrating and announcing a new Power Platform Admin Center that we're really proud of. It's got dark mode, but we're proud of a lot more things. I'll show that. It gives you an easy way to think about these pillars. So it's got secure on the left nav. It's got control that you could go through manage. And it's got the trust and verify under monitor and deploy. So it's got all the pages that you need to think about these pillars. And then the next thing is to think about how you think about the zones, and I'll show that. We've got this new concept that has been built for apps and flows that now serves agents as well. We call them environment groups. So the unique thing about Power Platform is these workspaces. So just like SharePoint has sites and Teams has teams, Power Platform has environments. These are containers where all the assets sitting in the environment honor the policies that IT put on that workspace. And then it's pretty hard. Aisha said MSIT has 90,000 environments. That's a lot of clicking to do if you want to govern them individually. We created this concept called environment group that I'll show you, where MSIT has 30,000 environments in one group. You just change it in one place, and it pushes it to all the environments. So that's the environment groups. And we'll talk about the rules. The third thing I want to show is this thing called routing. It's a very powerful capability we've introduced, and now it is available for Copilot Studio. And the concept there is pretty simple. Any individual that is browsing to the studio, to the Copilot Studio to build an agent for the first time, on the fly is provisioned in under a second a new environment, a dedicated personal environment, a workspace for them to build. And that's once IT enables this routing, they end up in this personal environment. That's how MSIT got to 90,000 environments. They work in that environment, and because it's in a group, it is actually printed with all the policies so you can actually sleep well at night. So we'll show that. And then last thing I want to call out is we've done a lot from governance for apps and flows, but agents like Asaf talked about and Ben talked about and Aisha introduces a new level of complexity and security risk. So we've been hard at work to add controls that are specific for agents. For example, who gets to read the transcript? Is it the maker, is it the environment administrator, or is it just IT? Because the transcript of certain agents can be, hey, tell me your credit card or tell me your social security number, and you don't want that to stream to anyone in the company. You want it to be contained. So you could actually turn off transcripts. You could say authentication can only be the user that is interacting with the agent. some agents actually need the maker's authentication, like there's a shared SPN that is calling into some specific database, and those would be restricted from everyone. And if you want that, I'll create you a red highlight, a red highway where you got dev, test, and prod, and I'll give you specific things, Lego box of different things, because you specifically, your agent needs something that is not what I'm going to open for everybody. Another example is anonymous access. So many of the agents can be built to interact with customers externally. That's not something you want everybody to build. You want it to be in the red zone. So with that, let me switch to show you all of that in a demo. All right, so here I am in the Power Platform Admin Center. This is the new one. If you really insist, you could go back to the old one by switching back to the old one. But this is the new Power Platform Admin Center. It gives you a bird's eye view. For example, the security score. I'm not going to touch too much on it. But in the security page, you get a dedicated page to optimize security. There's a search over here where I could actually write zones, and it will help me. So we're pretty proud. There's an agent behind the search that actually knows that zones, you're talking about environment and environment groups. So this is the thing it's actually picking. It's using AI Builder behind the scenes. And then I'm going to take you to environment groups where I touched on it. You could create new groups. I actually like the example that we use with Heineken. Heineken were creative. They built the group names based on their beer. So there's the green zone is Heineken 0.0, which is the light beer. And then when you go to yellow, they call it Heineken Silver, and on and on. So internally, they all understand, hey, don't drink and drive. For us, I picked different names. I'm here as Nestor in Woodgroove Bank, so it's a little bit more boring, and that's the names of the environments in here, environment groups. Once I create an environment, I actually click on this environment routing that I touched on. This is where you go and configure that whoever visited one of the studios, in this case, Power Apps, Power Automate, or now Copilot Studio, either everyone that is new that is visiting or a specific security group. So you could actually start by piloting with a set of people, route them to environment that they have personal environments. If you don't turn this on, who knows what would happen? The default is they all go to the default environment. So they all sit in one central environment. And that's not the safest, best way to actually manage it. That's why we highly recommend using environment routing. And then you say, for the visitors that come in this case, I picked Gen AI Lab. So this is the Gen AI Lab that everybody would land into. Now, once I go into the Gen AI Lab, so let's search for that specific group. I already see there's 22 environments that have been placed here. I could easily place more, and I'll show you through scripting how you could actually now create a map. You could say the blue developers, they go to the blue environment group. The green developers go to the green developer group. Like you could do a bunch of things that are specific, just like Heineken did. And then routing would be set such that all new developer would end up in this. So it will keep growing from 22 to more. But the magic really is when you switch to the rules. This is where you set up what would be the constraints, the limits for any new environment that lands in the group. So the first one I'm proud to present is this one, which is unique to the Power Platform. You will not see in any other product out there. So I'm switching gears for me as a maker just to express how this works. This is the Copilot Studio. And me as a maker building an agent, this is Zohar's graduate admin guide. When I click on tools and I extend my agents with new actions, really what I'm using is Power Platform connectors. So I click on Dataverse and there's all these connections and actions that I could take. Now I'm switching back to the admin experience. This is where admin gets to say what would be in the Lego box. Only the blue connectors or only the blue actions. So I could select a few, like I don't know why Kaizala is here, and I'll remove it. Or I could go to Dataverse, and this is what's really unique about the Power Platform. Because it's connector, it's a wrapper around REST APIs, I could actually say, yeah, I'm going to let you use Dataverse, but only the read actions. So you can read the tables, but you cannot change data inside it as a developer. So you have this flexibility at the environment group. You could say all the developers in the blue zone, they get to do SQL, but the people in the green zone, they don't get to do SQL. So this is the place where you do that. The other rules that you could play with is if you search for Copilot, you will see that there's a growing list of If only I could type. There's a growing list of things that we keep adding as rules. For example, you could say sharing limits. I'm going to allow co-authoring or not. Or IT has set up development such that in a personal dev environment, sharing is disabled. So in fact, you cannot share with anyone. It's personal only. So in the green zone, you could build whatever you want. The Lego box is full of goodies, but it's just for you. You cannot share it. If you want to share it beyond, you will need to go through application lifecycle management and bring your asset to production, and that's where IT gets involved. So there's more and more rules overall that you could find in here, and that is how you set up zones. So to summarize and coming back to the slide, this is where you could learn a lot more about the new Power Platform Admin Center and what we call managed platform. How many of you have heard the term managed environments? All right, so managed environments, we rebranded it now because it's bigger and better. It's called managed platform, and it actually includes 4 pillars so far. It allows organization to manage security, manage governance, things like I just showed you, manage operations that we're not going to touch on today, and there's a great session at the end, and I'll show you or point you that happened yesterday that talks about it. And then last is managed availability. These pillars, these premium capabilities for admins, allow you to run the Olympics on the Power Platform or Black Friday or any other event that is critical. So this is us promising you that if you have these capabilities, you can actually build assets 10 to 10,000 that would run all the time, and it's the best platform to get started with low code. So the next thing I want to show you, and I'm shifting gears, is, well, many of our customers, in fact, I'm not going to name any customers, said, UI, we don't do UI. We do everything in automation, and we write scripts. So I'm going to try and show you, Zenity, Palo Alto, others, how you use the API layer that we provide, that you could do a lot of this through scripting. And some of you might know when you have a hammer, everything is a nail. So we published all our APIs through a connector. So the same connectors that I showed you, like you could use SQL and Salesforce. In fact, if you have the privileges, you could use the Power Platform Admin V2 connector. So in the V2 connector that I'll show you, you've got a lot of the capabilities that you could do in the UI and Power Platform Admin Center, but you could do that through a connector, which means you could drag it into a flow, or you could put it in a Power App, and you could build your own Admin Center and Power Apps with Vibe coding. Just tell it, hey, I need this Power App, and it will actually create the screens for you, and then you could optimize it. It's pretty cool. And then the second thing I'll show you is those APIs, you could directly talk to those APIs. Either you use Python or JavaScript or TypeScript, or I'll show PowerShell, where you could use these APIs and actually consume all these directly from the API front. So I'm going to switch back to my demo machine. And here I'm at the Power Platform Admin Center showing you as Nestor another environment group that I created. And this environment group is the finance environment group in the bank. And there's one environment in it. So earlier I showed you, hey, you could use the add environment and drag them, but now I'm going to show you that through how I automated it really, really quickly through scripting. One of the new things that are nice about Power Automate is this Copilot thing, and I asked it already, hey, what does this flow do? And it actually tells you, hey, this is a simple flow, and you could actually, let's see it closer. This is a simple flow. It runs on a schedule, and it looks for finance environments, and then it puts them in the finance group. So let me show you how this is actually done. I am retrieving all the environments, and the way to think about it is really when you code it, you just write the Power Platform Admin. It will find you the specific connector. So this is actually browsing all the 1,500 connectors that are available for you in the Lego box, and I'm looking for these ones. This is the list of all the actions that you could do against the admin experience. So there's just a growing list. Every month we release more actions into here, and you could start coding against them. And in this case, I just retrieve the list. So get me all the environments, and then I have a for each that is looking at the value of the environment. I'm looking at the condition, and I'm just comparing the display name. So I'm using a naming convention, which is pretty lame, but I pick up the name from the environment name. And then if the condition includes finance, then I've got an environment group that is going to put it in. And clicking on test and running it manually for the sake of this demo and not just waiting for it to run on schedule. It starts running in the background. There's quite a few environments in this specific demo tenant. And then when I click refresh and we wait together, this list will continue to grow with new environments as it discovers new environments. And the reason I'm doing that is just start thinking about all the logic of how you want to place environments. So you might have opened up already for environments, and they're unstructured, they're all flat. You want to start moving them into specific environment groups, and you could do that either manually or through scripting. Like if MSIT needed to put their 90,000 environments manually into the environment groups, that would have been a nightmare. So using scripting is what they use, and that's how they move environments. And the pretty thing is, once the environment moves into an environment group that has rules on it, all those capabilities are enforced. So it makes it, it allows you to really sleep well at night because all these environments are now babysitted by these rules that you've created. All right, the next thing I want to show you is this experience. So here I've got Woodgroove Bank demo, and I just put 2 environments in it. And this is the personal environments, and it's another thing that MSIT is using is when you put environments in an environment group, and you say, this is the green zone, I want no sharing allowed, there's one interesting backdoor, I would say, where the makers that are also the owners of their environment can add people as system admins to the environment. So they could add users to the environment, and by giving them the rights on the environment itself, it actually gives them asset privileges. So IT wanted to control and say, hey, I don't want the users to be able to add any other user. And this I want to show you in PowerShell. So here, there's a script that just browses to the environment group and is enforcing a new rule that says users in this environment that have an environment in this environment group will not be able to add other users. So I'm going to block them from adding other users to their environment. So if I run the script, it actually wants me to authenticate twice. So it knows that I'm the admin. We're going to go through this quickly. And then I'm going to show you the experience. It runs. It says, yeah, I've enforced these block sysadmins from adding users to the environment. And then if I go back to this and I go to one of the environments that is now blocked and look at the environment details, click on users, and then just do a simple add user. Let's add Bobby. You will see that with the new rule, the maker is now, or the user that is the administrator is blocked from adding other users. So this actually ensures that the green zone is blocked to personal development only. No one can add other people, and no one can share their assets. And now they could build freely, so they could interact with the technical capabilities of Microsoft Copilot Studio. They can build whatever they want. And if they build something worthy, they will involve IT before it goes to production, which is pretty cool. So back to the slide, I'll celebrate one more thing. Coding with PowerShell is nice and Python, but there's nothing like coding it in C#. We have a new SDK that you could actually download into C# now, and we will extend it to TypeScript and Python, and it gives you IntelliSense, so it actually helps you when you're coding, which is pretty cool, and that's how you build your own IT glue on top of everything that is out of the box. And if you want to learn more about the Power Platform APIs and you want to start building as developers, then these are the 2 aka.ms links that you should be using. All right. Awesome. I'm glad we're catering to a developer audience in Build. The next thing I want to show is the third pillar. So, OK, so you open the gate. And now you've got, like MSIT, 10,000 people building apps and assets and solutions and agents for 10 people each. And you got to track and verify. So you have to trust and make sure that the right things are happening. What are the capabilities? And Aisha, one of her asks was, hey, how do I manage if I can't see what's happening? So we want to show you a few new things. We've been hard at work to create what we call the Copilot Hub. It's a central pane of glass that gives you visibility in the Power Platform Admin Center to everything agents in Copilot Studio. So your Dynamics 365 agents, your Power Platform agents, they all show up in one place. We will use this page to show you what's new. So there's a page called What's New. We will allow you to do settings. So we're centralizing all the controls and settings in one pane of glass. And we also show you usage and consumption. So it's kind of a portal that takes you to all the right places so you don't need to get lost. And then the second thing we want to celebrate in preview is this new inventory page that shows you all the Copilot Studio agents that are being built in your organization. One place to rule them all, so you don't need to go environment by environment or go maker by maker and hunt them and discover what people are building. And then the last thing I would touch on is, we love agents, so we have an agent behind the scene in the Power Platform Admin Center that is babysitting for you the environments and the assets that people are building and scanning for a list of today. There's about 50 recommendations that we already provide and growing. It finds you assets of people that left the organization. It finds you assets that are not used, and then it recommends to you, hey, click here and we'll delete it for you. So this agent is actually an advisor for administration, and it shows up through the different hubs. So in security, you will see all the security recommendations. In Copilot, you will see Copilot-related recommendation, and there's also a page that just aggregates the full list of recommendations for admins. So let me show you. So here I'm back into the Power Platform Admin Center. This is the Copilot Hub page. You could see the overview of getting started. We're also helping you convince your CISO on why to allow people to build agents in your organization. So there's a rich set of links that will take you to content about agents in Copilot Studio, how they're built, where they land, what's the architecture, how to constrain cross-geo residency. A lot of questions were being asked. Use Bing, don't use Bing. All of these are managed and visible in this Copilot page. We will use this What's New page to announce new announcements. So there's already a list of what's new in Power Platform, capabilities coming to intelligent apps, intelligent flows, and now agents. And then last I'll show you is settings. So there's just a large list of all the settings that are relevant to agents and Copilot that you could turn things on or off depending on the product. And there's a lot to find here. It's a great place to get started. The next thing I want to show you is inventory. So if I go to the Manage page, under the products, you would see now Copilot. So this is brand new. In fact, we've been hard at work to land it for build. It was running hot up until the last day. And we have cleared it with private preview customers. Now it's really working. It's showing you all the agents. If they get deleted, they disappear. If they get created, they show up. And then you could do things like, I want to show my agent. So this is an agent that I built in this environment. Or if Nestor has an agent, then these are the agent from Nestor. So you could actually go and find specific, and you could help people. Clicking on it will take you to the Maker portal, so you could actually see everything in the Maker portal. And there's also environment data, so you could see what environment it is, and it will take you to the environment page to manage it. There's more and more metadata that we will add, so you could keep adding metadata and get more informed. And this will continue to get better and better, so the inventory will be the one place to see all the agents, which is pretty cool. All right, so with that, let's switch back to the deck and do the closing. So our call to action, and I'm going to go really quickly on things that we talked about and then overwhelm you with additional homework where you could learn more, because this was really the tip of the iceberg. So we talked about these 3 pillars. This is how you should think about governing and securing your agents. And that's true for low code in general. You got to secure it, you got to control it, and then you got to trust and verify and refine everything you've done in the 2 other pillars. You have a role to play as IT or anyone involved in IT to move your organization from the initial stage of playing and testing the water all the way to an efficient stage where you've got clear guidance, and we've got many customers that are already in that stage, like MSIT that came on stage and are seeing tens of thousands of agents being built in the organization and driving efficiency, so they do a lot of things in your day-to-day mundane work so people can actually focus on the interesting part of their job. We have a rich set of blogs, so we keep all our blogs, and then we publish them on the day of build. So on Monday, there was a lot of blogs that came out. Some of those are on this list. And then there's a lot more content and articles to read about, including the two at the bottom of MSIT is publishing articles for everybody on how internally Microsoft is doing this governance and management of things. And then I want to call out, we have a great customer advisory team that is building tools on top of everything that we do. So there's a book of 200 plus pages. You could use Copilot to actually answer questions on top of it. And it tells you everything that I've said and a lot more on how to get started and how to build it right. And there's a specific guide on Copilot Studio that you could actually go to this aka.ms page and then discover about Copilot Studio, additional things. And then there's a great toolkit. The toolkit actually gives you a rich set of capabilities, including things like calculating how much messages it would cost you, or doing validation to your agents. So there's one agent actually doing testing of the quality of the agent that you built. There's a lot of things that you should go look at in this specific kit. And then the last thing I would celebrate from Cat is we have a hackathon on how to build agents. You could scan this and participate. I want to say it's rich with prizes, but I have no idea. So, but you should go start. You should go test it out and tell me. I talked about a few sessions. This highlighted is the key session that we touched on, the 132 that happened yesterday at 2 to 3. Gives you a lot more about managed platform and the 4 pillars of managed platform. There was a good session there from Sean on how to think about cost and cost management. We didn't touch a lot about cost management. And then now I'm just going to run you through, and you could take it from the deck after it. It's a lot of other sessions that relates to AI. So we had a lot of AI and Copilot Studio sessions in this build, and all of them are in this list. And there's also on-demand list of separate. So with that, I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank our speakers that joined. The 4 of us are going to be outside. If there's any question, we'll answer, because we left no room for questions. So thank you.